At some point, all good things must come to an end. In the moment when a driver and team are at the peak of their powers, winning becomes routine. Records fall like dominoes. It feels like it's never gonna end. For the past few years, Max Verstappen and Red Bull have had the Formula One grid in an iron grip, redefining what it means to be dominant. 19 wins in a single season, the most consecutive victories in F1 history, the longest run as championship leader, pole positions, fastest laps, and world titles being casually collected like infinity stones. These guys had a stranglehold on the sport, to the point where winning became inevitable. But in Formula One, things can change in the blink of an eye. And since their days of dominance, they just haven't been the same. The competition has slowly reeled them in, closing the gap, and their margin for error has vanished. All of a sudden, they look exposed, vulnerable, and human. But even as the foundations have weakened over the past year, one man has continued to deliver. Red Bull may have fallen, but Max Verstappen is still phenomenal. Race after race, he's extracted every ounce of performance from whatever car he's been given. Even when he's not in the fastest machinery, he still finds a way to stay in the fight. Whether it's holding off quicker cars, managing his tyres to perfection, or capitalizing on the smallest openings, he's still operating at a level few others can match. It's a testament to how complete of a driver he's become. Incredibly fast, relentless, adaptable, and that's what makes him so dangerous, even in times when the odds are stacked against him. Wins no longer come as easily as they did in years like 2022 and 2023, but to an extent, there's a greater appreciation for those victories that come through sheer grit, determination, and an unrelenting drive to never say die. However, there's only so much one can do in a sport that's so heavily reliant on the car you're driving, and the RB21 simply won't allow him to do more than what he delivers weekend in and weekend out. The Austrian Grand Prix seemed like a defining moment in this year's championship. Things simply went from bad to worse. His final run in Q3 was compromised by having to slow down for double wide yellows caused by Gasly at the last corner, leaving him starting down in P7. And when you're starting that far down the order, there's more risk of getting caught up in midfield melee. Going into turn 3, Max is just minding his business until Antonelli comes steaming through and rams straight into him. And it's crazy how in my last video I was praising the hell out of this kid and he goes and does this. But anyway, rookie mistakes happen, so it's fine, as long as he learns for next time. It was also funny to see how chill Max was about the whole thing, because if that was some other driver like, I don't know, George Russell, the head loss would have been astronomical. But through no fault of his own, he'd been taken out, not just from the Grand Prix, but seemingly contention for the World Championship. I mean, it was always going to be a long shot, given how good the McLarens have been. Nonetheless, the way this season started suggested that he would be a factor for a good while longer. But it seems like everyone in the Red Bull camp has just come to terms with the fact that they're not in this fight anymore. From race 1, he was clinging on for dear life, hoping that the Spanish Grand Prix would be the turning point for their season. But as we know now, the FlexiWing technical directive hasn't done much to the competitive order. And if anything, McLaren have only become even stronger. Let's flash back to the season opener. Max in Australia was pure class, jumping Piastri at the start, applying heavy pressure on Norris in the first stint, right up until his tyres dropped off a cliff and he made a mistake. The chaos helped him keep within at least touching distance of the McLarens, and I'm of the opinion that merely his presence alone has them shook. And finishing second that day was the best they could have achieved, if not better than expected. Then in China, once again, P2 in sprint quali and third in the sprint race, and then putting on a clinic in tyre management during the Grand Prix. Then in Japan, once again, he was sensational. His decision to opt for a low downforce setup to be quicker on the straights while brilliantly handling the tricky balance of the RB21 through the high-speed sections was pure magic. He was so confident in his ability through the S's that he could afford to run a less draggy rear wing. He obviously lost time through some of the lower speed corners, but the sheer amount of bravery he possessed was enough to see him claim pole by just a few hundredths of a second. In the race, that hard-earned track position, combined with Suzuka being a difficult track to overtake on, and the low degradation of the Pirellis, created a perfect storm for the Dutchman to claim victory. It was one of those weekends where he reminded everyone why you can never count him out. His execution was perfect, but the next race in Bahrain was a nightmare. Quite simply, they had no pace. The track layout didn't suit their car whatsoever, they were overheating their tyres, couldn't find a good setup window all weekend. Max was even having brake issues, and operationally, they were so poor. The lighting system in the pit lane just wasn't working, meaning both drivers had slow stops. Essentially, everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. But then in Jeddah, they were back. He stormed to his second pole in just 3 races with a mighty lap, by again, only 1/100th of a second. However, at the start, Piastri got his elbows out and forced him onto the runoff area. As a result, he got a 5-second time penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. Oscar got ahead of the first round of pit stops, and after that, it was over. The pace of the Red Bull that weekend was definitely good enough to win, but Max just got caught out by Piastri's aggression at turn 1. And once the McLaren hit clean air, Oscar was basically untouchable. It was one of those rare moments where Verstappen qualified on pole, but didn't win the race. And when the Red Bull was a more dominant car, converting a pole into a victory was much easier. But now, the competition is much closer, so even the smallest moment can make the biggest difference. Piastri won that race at turn 1, but knowing Max Verstappen, he doesn't let anything slide. Best believe he's going to get his revenge at some point. It's just a matter of when, not if. Miami was another brilliant pole lap for the Grand Prix, but on Sunday, the McLarens were just too fast. He put up a good fight, but had to settle for P4 in the end. Imola started out quite rough, but gradually, Red Bull found more performance and improved the car overnight between Friday and Saturday. As a result, Max was able to secure a spot on the front row alongside Oscar, setting up another turn 1 showdown between the two. Verstappen didn't have the best getaway, but when Piastri moved to cover the fast-starting George Russell, it left the racing line wide open. It was narrow, risky, but not impossible. And that's all the invitation Max needed. Sweeping around the outside of Piastri, carrying tremendous amounts of speed through Tamburello, millimeter perfect with car positioning and his braking point, precision under pressure. Oscar admitted that in hindsight, he braked too early and left too much space for Max to take advantage. Nonetheless, it doesn't take away from how unreal this move was. It was do or die, win it or bin it, and Verstappen absolutely nailed it. From there, he never looked back, and that move at turn 1 felt as much a statement as anything else, reminding everyone that he's still in the hunt, still hungrier than ever, and willing to do whatever it takes to come out on top. And that was one of the only times that Red Bull seemed to have the slightly better car in the race. Their tyre deg was much better than anticipated. The upgrade seemed to work well too, and Imola's track layout has always played to their strengths. The only other races where they were on par, or at least within touching distance of McLaren, were Jeddah and Japan. So for them to have won so convincingly in Imola was a huge sign of encouragement. After that win, he was just 22 points away from the championship lead. Monaco was another damage limitation weekend, and then came the weekend everybody was waiting for, the Spanish Grand Prix. Only for Piastri to take pole by the biggest margin of the year at that moment in time. The technical directive effectively did nothing, and was basically just a waste of everybody's time and money. Max was having a great race, up until, that moment. And it was a moment that exposed one of his biggest weaknesses, which is being able to control his emotions. Say what you will about the action itself, it cost him a lot more than it served him. That moment of rage didn't need to happen. With a cooler head and a bit of patience, he still would have walked away with a solid haul of points. Besides that though, the frustration to me also seemed to stem from the overall situation. You know, Red Bull putting him on the hard tyre, then getting swamped at the restart by Leclerc and Russell, and being told to give the position back. Initially, I thought this stemmed from him being desperate to get after the McLarens, you know, for the championship, which maybe contributed somewhat, but really, it was more just heat of the moment stuff than anything else. After Monaco, he was just 25 points off the championship lead, and that gap nearly doubled because of just one moment. Now Max has been doing everything he can, wringing the neck out of that Red Bull every weekend. But for the first time in years, it's not enough. He doesn't have the fastest car. Some weekends are not the cleanest, and the margin of superiority that once cushioned every mistake, that's now gone. But that is the reality of Formula 1. You're not always going to have the best package. And while Verstappen has delivered at a world-class level, he's also enjoyed the privilege of driving what's been the most complete car on the grid for years. Well, at least when he's the one behind the wheel. And pair that with the most efficient team in terms of pit stops, strategy, and execution. A well-oiled machine that rarely faltered. But teams go through cycles, even the best ones. Moments of dominance are often followed by periods of turbulence. And for Red Bull, midway through last year and throughout this year, they just haven't looked the same. The absence of Adrian Newey has definitely left a noticeable void. Loss of key figures like Jonathan Wheatley, Rob Marshall, and others has also had a big impact. The Horny Horner situation has never really stopped haunting them. But despite all of this, they're still one of the most formidable teams on the grid when everything clicks. On front limited tracks with lots of high-speed corners and track temperatures that aren't crazily high, Red Bull are just as good as any other team. However, that's not enough to win championships. McLaren have produced such a well-rounded car that even on their worst weekends, they've still got a shot at fighting for podiums. Canada was a great weekend for Max, doing everything he needed to do. And then coming back to Austria, expecting more from Red Bull's home race, he didn't even get to see the grandstands at turn 6, where the Orange Army were waiting for him. And seeing him in the post-race interviews, he seemed at peace with the fact that this year, he's most likely not going to be fighting for the championship. And honestly, at this point, it's hard to deny. Mathematically sure, it's still possible. Heck, it's still possible for pretty much anybody. But is it realistic? Well, it's looking less and less likely. The McLaren is just too good right now. fast over one lap, kind on its tyres, and relentless over a race distance. The kind of car that Red Bull has produced for a majority of the ground effect era. The kind of car that Max used to crush the field in. But maybe, just maybe, being out of the title fight could unlock something different in Verstappen. Without the pressure of defending a lead or chasing every single point, we might see a more aggressive version of him. He has nothing to protect now and everything to go for. There will definitely be weekends where the track characteristics and conditions will suit the Red Bull very well and allow Verstappen to win a few more races. And how much the team focus on this year's development versus next year will be interesting to see as well. Initially, Red Bull probably would have sacrificed next year to fully attack the 2025 title. But since it's over, according to Helmut Marko, they might as well switch their focus now to 2026 completely. Most teams are doing that anyway, to be fair. And Red Bull especially will need as much time as they can get, since they'll be manufacturing their own power units next year. If you're in Max's position though, surely you'd be exploring options. Namely, the team that have the best track record when it comes to power units. Yeah, I'm hinting at the Verstappen Mercedes rumours, a topic that at this point feels like it's been milked more than the Fernando Alonso rookie joke. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because there's no point pontificating on what might happen, or what Verstappen's camp and Mercedes might be discussing. For all we know, they could have yapped about the weather for 5 minutes and called it negotiating to stir up something in the media. Or what exit clauses exist in the contracts. Cause bro, how would you even obtain that information unless you've visibly seen the contract? What's most realistic is that Russell and Antonelli re-sign in like August or September, because that's just when Mercedes usually conclude contract negotiations. But even if Verstappen desperately wants to join Mercedes, because the Red Bull situation seems so dire, there's no guarantee they'll be even good in 2026, because again, nobody knows squat about what other teams are doing. The driver lineup debate would also be another big talking point, probably a separate video if Max actually decides to head to Brackley. But as of this moment, nothing has been agreed. I don't know, maybe I'll be proven wrong in a couple of months and Max joins the Silver Arrows, or maybe Aston Martin, or joins GT3. But the current likelihood is that he stays where he currently is. Not long ago, it felt like this guy was well on his way to completely sweeping every championship in the ground effect era. Red Bull looked completely unstoppable. The car isn't bulletproof. The team looks fractured, and the once fearless aura around them has started to fade away. They are no longer the benchmark. They're the ones playing catch up. Is this the end of a dynasty? Well, on the basis of 2025 so far, with McLaren being as dominant as they've been, the answer is, well, yeah. Red Bull just aren't the same as they were a couple of years ago. And despite Verstappen's best efforts, he can no longer realistically compete for the World Championship. He's still performing at a very high level, but he's also won multiple World Championships with this team and has nothing left to prove, and every reason to chase another chapter if he feels like the current one is slipping. Whether that's Mercedes, Aston Martin, or even just biding his time until Red Bull gets back on top, his next move will be an important one. He's still young, still hungry, but the question now isn't, can Max win another title? I mean, of course he can. It's where and with who. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what your thoughts are on Verstappen's season so far and his future down in the comment section below. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you're new to get my latest videos in the future. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.